Welcome to WVTC TV Network, capturing family moments in real time, bringing families closer together from the comforts of home. We are unleashing something different to the world. Start your subscription today for the low price of $4.99 per month or $55 annually. Go to www.wvtctvnetwork.com to sign up today. WVTC TV Network is streaming live on 8 different platforms. You can easily download the WVTC TV Network app on the Apple Store, Play Store, Roku, Fire TV, and more. Here at WVTC TV, we have access to movies that everyone can enjoy, including independent films, Sons of a Preacher and a Good Thing, Treasures of Life, the epic drama, The Passion of the Christ, and the box office hit Madagascar Escape to Africa. Remember, go to www.wvtctvnetwork.com and sign up today.
Welcome to We Live in Our Faith but Under the Law. It's a church law program. We're sitting in the back of a church to give you a sense of it happened. It could happen in your church or any church in America. And so we just want to give you that backdrop. That's why you're looking at a church setting, but we're sitting outside of the worship experience because we're going to be talking about cases that have caused the church or members of the church to be in court. Members suing the church, members terminating people in the church. And so this last week we talked about
Urban.
You want to tell me or you want to let me tell?
Go ahead.
Last week we talked about a case that we're going to bring back up this week because they're 2 parallel cases. And I have on either side of me 2 lawyers. Yeah, I'm a lawyer too, but there are 2 lawyers. One, Attorney Rodney Howard. He's the senior partner, managing partner in the law firm of Wilson Howard, PC. To my right, to your left, is Attorney Aaron McLeod, who is of the McLeod Group.
McLeod Legal Advisors.
McLeod Legal Advisors. So you got 2 lawyers on either side of me, and I'm going to try to mediate what they say, right?
Right.
And so, Attorney Howard, tell us, what is the case that you talked about last week, and bring us up to date with the case that we're going to discuss today, because they're very similar, I tell you.
Well, last week we discussed Urban versus Lilydale Progressive Missionary Baptist Church. And in that particular case, the pastor was terminated by the church, and he brought a suit to have his employment restored. He said that the church did not follow its bylaws, and the church leadership terminated him contrary to the provision of the bylaws. They just used the church employee handbook. The court found that they had jurisdiction. They could decide the matter because they felt that this was something that they could apply neutral principles without getting into the church doctrine. Unfortunately, that particular case has been distinguished by our case, which we are looking at today, which involves church membership.
So here's the thing. You had a pastor that was terminated by the church, and he then goes to court and says it was a wrongful discharge. Like many of you get fired and you say, oh, no, you should not have fired me. What he said was they didn't have authority to fire him according to the bylaws in the court.
And the court indicated that the church needed to apply its bylaws, that the handbook did not authorize the church board to make the sole termination decision. They had to bring the termination of the pastor before the entire church congregation.
This is the deal. Pastors church members, all of you should read the bylaws. You should know what the bylaws say. Those are the governing documents. So when you go to court, the first thing the judge is going to ask, let me see your bylaws. Now, they had a church handbook, right? A personnel handbook.
That's correct.
That was not the final governing document. The bylaws are for a Baptist church, are the governing document, because it's what they call a congregational church. The congregation controls what happens with that church. Now, if it had been an African Methodist Episcopal or Church of God in Christ, those are ecclesiastical. Or if it had been Episcopal church, those are ecclesiastical. They got, or the Lutheran church, they have a bishop, they have a hierarchy, and they have rules that start with the denomination and they work down to the local congregation. Are y'all with me? Well, we're not going to talk more about that. We got a new case today. Churches keep going to court. I don't know why y'all doing that. Okay, Bernie versus Faith Church of Lebanon. That's in Illinois too.
Yes. The Urban case that we talked about last week was decided by the appellate court of the first appellate district, which takes in Cook County. The case that we're talking about today is Berner versus Faith Church of Lebanon. It was brought in the Circuit Court of St. Clair County, which is in the East St. Louis area.
So it's all the way down to the tip of Illinois. So I know y'all wondering, every county has a district court, and then there's the Court of Appeals for that particular district. They break up into smaller groups. They make decisions if you appeal a case. First, the case goes to a trial court, then it goes to the appellate court, and then if you really have a case, which most people don't, go to the Illinois or Supreme Court of the state that the case was brought in. I hope y'all listening now, because pastors, church members, church board members, you need to understand this. Y'all be running the court. You spend a lot of money. Every time you go to the next level, it's more money because it costs more time for the lawyers to prepare an appeal to the appellate court. And if you think I'm going to go all the way to the Supreme Court, I'm going to charge you for that. So much about I asked Attorney Aaron McLeod, how much we charge?
Minimally discounted rate $3.50 an hour, but ideally $5.50 an hour.
$5.50 an hour. That's just to try the case. Not going to the appellate court because I got to write a brief. I got a timetable. I'm just trying to paint the picture. So when you see these cases, say we're gonna go, I'm gonna appeal it. No, it's not just like walking up, taking an elevator up to the courtroom. It's filing a lot of papers to prove, legally prove, not factually, that your case has merit. Okay.
Okay.
Now tell us about this case.
In Berner versus Faith Church of Lebanon, Joel Berner and certain other members of the congregation were expelled from the church.
They put them out.
They were expelled by the church council.
They were put out by the church leadership, the church council in some churches.
And they brought suit in the Circuit Court of St. Clair County, seeking to get a declaratory judgment.
What is that declaratory judgment?
A quick judgment.
Not a quick judgment. What does a declaratory judgment mean? It ain't a regular judgment. They didn't decide the merits.
It really is a
It's quick.
it's quick, but they want the court to declare that the actions that were being taken were contrary to law. And so so
they wanted the court to declare that the case that was brought was not legally.
They wanted the court to declare that the actions of Faith Church of Lebanon were terminating them as members was contrary to the law and to the governing documents of the church.
All right, y'all got that? You got to stay with us. We got to break it down so you can we're gonna get there in a minute. All right, so what happened?
Well, Berner and his fellow members who had been expelled brought this lawsuit. They filed a complaint, and unfortunately, the court looked at the complaint and decided that they should dismiss the complaint entirely, dismiss the case entirely, and they applied what's called the ecclesiastical abstention doctrine.
Now, let me just tell you, they make up all these terms to make it confusing for you. It's not confusing. People were expelled from the church, And what the court said is you didn't have a right to do that because you didn't follow your own rules. The rules say this is the procedure. It had to go before what? The whole church?
Well, what we're looking at though is the court did not say that.
Who said it?
The plaintiffs, the people who were expelled said that. They came to court saying this is what we are contending and we want the court to declare that we're right.
So they went to court saying that they were right to object to being terminated
Yeah,
Because
they
it
were
did-
wrongfully expelled.
by the church
Mm-hmm.
council. Why did they say that? What was the basis of that?
Because according to the bylaws of the church, the council was to make the recommendation for expulsion, and the entire church membership had to vote on members being expelled.
At least those people that got put out read the bylaws. I don't know if everybody else read the bylaws. Maybe the church council did. What do you think?
Probably not, but nonetheless, the court ruled that they weren't going to get in it.
The court ruled what though? What did the court say?
The court ruled that they were going to stand on the ecclesiastical abstention doctrine. Ecclesiastical means church, abstaining, because it dealt with a polity or a church matter. It was not a neutral matter.
So here's the thing. Y'all keep running the court churches, you keep filing lawsuits. 90% of the time, the courts do not want to get into the business of church polity procedures. They don't want to have anything to do with that because they don't want to be in conflict with whatever it is, your rules of governance for your church body, whether it's Baptist, Methodist, whatever it is, the church wants to move back. The only thing the courts want to do is deal with strictly matters of law.
Well,
And
there's a further issue.
what's the further issue?
The Constitution of the United States,
There's
again, because of the First Amendment prohibition against establishment of religion or prohibition of religious practices, that the secular courts don't want to get involved in church matters, in religious organizations.
You know why? Because America does not have a defined religion. Now, other countries you go to, they will say the religion of our country is Protestantism. Our religion is Catholicism. But in America, you have freedom of religion and you have freedom to worship. And so the courts are not going to impose a rule that would violate your church or your faith polity, your faith
Doctrine.
And that's why you have to be careful because you will file a lawsuit, you're paying money for lawyers, and you get there and the court says, we have nothing to do with this. That's basically what they said.
The court said, we refuse to take jurisdiction over this matter because it involved church doctrine. That membership is a church doctrine issue. And how you become a member, how membership is terminated, those are issues that should be decided solely by the religious organization and not by the court.
So what that means is, I've seen church bylaws. Y'all try to drop these bylaws off the internet or you go buy the little standard bylaw books. You have to tailor them to represent the policies and practices of your church. You just don't, and I know y'all don't want to pay lawyers all the time, but you need a lawyer to help you do some bylaws. You have to talk about membership. What is church membership? What things do they have to be concerned about in church membership in the bylaws?
Well, first, one of the things that they have to do is determine who is eligible to be a member.
That's number one.
What age do you have to be a member? And once you achieve that status, are you an active member or an inactive member? How
Okay.
do you define that?
Yes, define an active member. Is an active member somebody that only pays money? Is an active member somebody that has to attend? How many times do they have to attend to be an active member? You have to put those things in the bylaws. A lot of people say an active member has to be participating in the offering. Well, how do you know that? How do you define it? Because if you have to go to court, I may only give once a year. Does that make me an active member in your church? So these are things y'all need to think about. I guarantee your bylaws don't specify. And the only time you use those bylaws is when there's a church fight. And then Dead people come and vote at the church meeting. Y'all can say, man, I know you don't think I can hear you, but I know you're nodding your head. You've been to those church fights. So
Well,
what else they got to have about membership?
The membership also has to determining how you are terminated as a member.
Oh, see, y'all say remove the right hand of fellowship. That's not anywhere in writing. What does that mean? Does that mean I take my hand back from you? How do I remove a member? What are the causes or basis for membership termination?
Conduct unbecoming a Christian. What is that?
What is that? What kind of conduct do I have to have? You got to spell it out, because you can say it's conduct to you that's unbecoming, but to me, it might be all right. Is it a dress code at your church? There used to be signs on some doors. Women can't wear pants. Have you changed that in your bylaws? So you put them out because they come in pants on Easter Sunday. Y'all don't have to say amen. I'm just asking questions. Come on, Aaron. Talk to me.
You know, with the bylaws, I've seen, in particular, when it came time to vote for a pastor, there was an accounting of the roster, and from the records, we could see that you minimally in the last calendar year had to make at least $100 contribution to the church.
Was that in the bylaws?
It was in the bylaws.
Most churches don't have anything that defines an active member. What is an inactive member? How long do I have to be inactive before you reinstate me? Because I hear you say, when you open the door to church, you say, candidate for baptism, Christian experience. I don't know how you know if I have it unless I say I do. And then letter. How many people have come to your church with a letter? Do you have that in your bylaws? You accept letters?
Yes. I've seen that you come by Christian experience or by letter. I remember my first Sunday at the current church where I pastored. We got a letter from a member who had transitioned to the state of New York. And then her pastor wrote us to receive that a member. And I had to write a letter back to that
That's
pastor.
rare.
Very rare.
Yeah.
But let me tell you this. Church that I pastor is a hierarchical church. They live by the book of discipline, and they were ready to see if I could function in fulfilling the task of drafting that letter. Nothing hard, but more specifically, was I going to honor
when he
that?
says hierarchical church, it's like African Methodist Episcopal, that's United Methodist Church, that's Episcopal Church, that's CME, Christian Methodist Episcopal, that is Catholic churches, that's Lutheran churches. They have a structure, and there are certain powers to the bishop. So you need to read your, what do y'all call that book of?
The Book of Discipline.
You gotta, I know you haven't read it. You know there's a book. It's called a Book of Discipline. I think they change it every 4 years or 2 years.
Every 4 years, there's a general conference, and modifications of the Book of Discipline are made at the general conference.
And to that end, when you talk about the encouragement to have or to retain counsel for matters of this, I think is prudent, in particular as churches evolve. When you have constitutions, arguably you want them to be rigid, but you want them to be effective. So sometimes you may have to revisit them.
You know, not sometimes, every year. We look at your bylaws, look at a Book of Discipline as it talks about voting. When do I get to vote as a member? Do I have to wait 6 months? Do I wait 6 weeks? Do I have to go to new member class? Put that down in the bylaws or see if it's in your discipline. Something about how can you have membership meetings? What's a quorum?
All of those are issues. Again, these are ecclesiastical issues. These are church doctrine issues that should be in the bylaws. How often should the general membership meet? Do they just have an annual meeting of the membership? Can the membership call their own meeting without the church leadership being involved? What are the ways in which the members are able to function? And then,
who calls a meeting? Does the pastor call a meeting? Does the board call a meeting? How does that happen?
that should be in the bylaws as well. If the pastor alone can call the meeting, that's one issue. If the pastor with the church board can jointly call a meeting, that's another issue. Can the membership by themselves call a meeting if the issue involves the pastor or the church board? That's another issue. All of that should be in the bylaws of the church.
So you got a lot of things about bylaws and what should be in there. What is a member? Who keeps membership records? You always say it's recorded in the church. Where are they? where are the records? Because every time you go to court
Mhm.
and there's a vote, the first thing the judge will say is, give me a list of members, active members. And 90% of our churches do not have a list.
And how is that list maintained?
Every
Who determines the active members and who determines the inactive members? How do you become inactive? And if you are inactive, are you notified before you placed on the inactive roll? Is there a way that you can be restored to active membership? What is the process? That should be in the bylaws as well.
And I know this seems like it's very complicated, but it isn't very complicated because when you have a lawsuit, we're going to go downtown to the Daily Center and have a vote in the Daily Center before you could even move on the case. You got to find out who has authority to make a decision for the church, and the members have to vote.
And the other issue is there a vote that's simply a majority vote, or is it a super majority, 2/3 vote? Those are the kinds of things that have to be spelled out in the bylaws as well.
So why do they need a lawyer? I know you want to know. When do you need a lawyer? Well, you need them all the time, but I'm not going to say that. I don't want you to call me. I don't want to be a lawyer.
I think every church should endeavor amongst a legal audit on an annual basis.
A legal audit. What's a legal audit?
And so what you're going to do is, obviously, in this context, review the bylaws, review the policies and procedures, the handbooks.
You're going to review them with whom?
The board, the pastor, providing what we call general counsel services to that church. And where there's a deficit within my practice, be able to recommend them to someone who may have a particular expertise, i.e. now everybody's creating content. So you might need somebody who's versed in intellectual property.
Intellectual property means what?
You can't touch a sermon. You can't taste a sermon. It's really the brain property, the written.
So is the sermon, what he's talking about, is the sermon, is it owned by the church or the pastor?
It depends. A portion would be owned by.
If you preach it in the pulpit of that church where you're the pastor, who owns your sermon?
It depends.
So you need to have a contract
Mhm.
between you and the pastor.
Because you have the actual content or the literature aspect, but then you also have the production aspect, the microphones, the mixing, and all that piece.
But I gave the sermon. Do I own my sermon?
Not in totality, you don't.
See, y'all need to know that. I know.
And
Don't fight later. Talk about it now.
do the bylaws spell out that the ownership of the content is jointly owned by the pastor and the church, or is it solely owned by the pastor, or is it solely owned by the church?
And if I'm the pastor and I go preach somewhere else, who owns that content, me or the church that I pastor? You got to put all that in writing. Pastors, you hear me. Church members, you hear me. Because everything is being monetized now. You have to have an understanding, so you don't have to fight and you don't have to go to court. You make agreements. Who owns what and to what extent.
Well, we're also looking at the idea. If we go back to the Apostle Paul, he asked the question in 1 Corinthians in the 5th chapter,
It's biblical.
and in the 6th chapter, he says, why do you have lawsuits at all with one another? To have them is to be in defeat already. If you have a grievance against another, do you bring that to a court and have it decided by those who are unrighteous? Why would you bring your church matters to court in the first place? But if you don't have an alternative that's in your bylaws, a dispute resolution clause that spells out how to resolve those disputes internally, then people are subject to take them outside the church, outside the religious organization, to a court to try and seek resolution.
And guess what? Most of the judges that you may appear before, they're not familiar with your church polity, your church procedures. And so you are asking non-people of your faith to make a decision about your church and your church matters. That is why we are suggesting, at least our law firm always recommends the church have an arbitration clauses. Before you go to court, before you sue the pastor sues the church, or the member sue the church, you must arbitrate, which is really following the biblical principles. And you have to sit and discuss what is happening within the church body. And you have an independent party, an arbitrator, just help you have a peaceful discussion. But you don't want to go directly to court. It's not the way that God would have it, and it's not the way that you and I should do our business. Well, gentlemen, we got another show coming up soon, but for this week, what do y'all want to close with?
I just want to affirm the leadership of Attorney Howard and Attorney Wilson, and how they avail themselves to help churches. As much as you say going before a tribunal, before a judge who doesn't understand church culture, polity, it also doesn't make sense that you go and retain counsel who doesn't understand the culture of your church.
If they're not a Christian, why are you hiring them if you're a Christian?
And taking a step further, having
just
worked for a larger church with outside counsel, big firm who did a legal audit, the work was great for all intents and purposes. But when it comes down to creating the bylaws,
Make it plain, because I don't know what you're talking about.
you need to have somebody who can, one, listen intently to what your concerns are.
And
It
that
is
hourglass is not dripping at $250, $350 an hour. It's a partner, $500 an hour just to talk to you. I've had people come to me, and I'm not cut you off.
Yeah, no.
I want them to understand what you're saying. You go down to these majority firms, and they are there. They are not, they don't charge you the same that we do. I'm just telling you what I'm telling you. And I've had people go to meet with a lawyer downtown and come back and ask me to interpret what they said. Well, if you can't understand them, why are you going there? I'm just asking a question.
And then more specifically, will come to us and then not want to enumerate or pay. But
They don't want to pay.
the reality is that even when conflicts come, our first inclination is trying to resolve it
Yes.
amicably, biblically.
Without court,
Yes.
without court calls, without court time. Because if you take me to court, it costs you double what it would be if I could just talk to you, to your members and to you, and we could resolve it within the room. If you take them, it'll cost you, or any lawyer, because it's more time. I got to get up. I got to write papers. I got to prepare myself. I got to appear before a judge. It's inconvenient for you and for us. And so it's better we can come to your church, meet with the people, and resolve it internally. That's our goal.
The other thing that these two cases, is the courts may or may not take jurisdiction. They may invoke the ecclesiastical abstention doctrine,
Which means they're not going to take your case. It's
or
back
they
home.
may say that we can apply the neutral
Theory.
theories of reviewing the matter that do not involve church doctrine. But it depends on the court. Some courts will take jurisdiction, some courts won't. You can't rely on the court to be the arbiter in these kinds of situations.
So what he's saying, when he says the court, he's talking about the judge. You're not going to have judges that are sensitive to your religion and to understand your particular denomination. They may or may not. We had a case once with a pastor. First thing the judge said was, how do you come to be a pastor? And he said, I'm called by the Lord, which is part of our tradition as Baptists, Church of God in Christ, and so, and many other denominations. So the judge couldn't understand that. He kept saying, how did you come? Who ordained you? Who certified you?
What training did you
What
have?
training did you go through? He said, I was called by the Lord. And so that did not register with, I had to stand there and interpret for this man, because I told the judge, that is what he's saying. He's not being obstinate. He's not being disrespectful. That is the doctrine of his church tradition. Had I not been there, not known the faith, I would have been with the judge.
Well, the judge still required us to bring in someone as an expert on Baptist religion to explain just being called to be
What
a
that
pastor,
means,
what
yes.
that meant.
because we had to have an expert witness. That's more money and time. And that's why I'm saying to you, we need to resolve these things. Wilson Howard, we just want to train you. And then the McLeod group, council, what y'all do?
We're here to serve. We handle the
They represent,
transactional matters, but
they do contracts, they do real estate matters, right?
Yep.
They will write contracts. Don't be writing your own contracts. I
Please
know
don't.
y'all using AI. It's not
the
enough.
same.
No, because some of that stuff you have to verify. So I'm not telling you how to spend your money, but I'm telling you how not to waste it. Y'all with me? Well, I'm sorry. We got to go. Don't we have to go?
We have to go.
So we will see you next week with another case, church law. We live in our faith. I know your faith. You live in your faith, but you also live in the law. It's live in our faith and under the law. See you next week.
Go to your Apple or Google Play Store and download the WVTC Gospel Radio app today. You can also say, Alexa, play WVTC Radio Skills.
Would you like to play WVTC Radio Network?
Absolutely. Download it today.
Views made on the preceding program are not those of WVTC Radio, iNetworks Communications, or their financial supporters.
Winning victory through Christ, WVTC Allsip Chicago, and iNetworks Communication Station.